everybody, and welcome to the Responsible AI Report by the Responsible AI Institute, where we are interviewing some of the leading voices in AI. I'm very excited. We have Duncan Crabtree-Ireland joining us on the show today. Duncan, thanks so much for being here.
It's great to be here, Patrick. Thanks for having me.
It's really great to have you on the show, Duncan. You are, of course, the National Executive Director and Chief Negotiator at SAG-AFTRA, the union for actors, voiceover artists, a wide variety of different types of artists as well. And you have really played a key role in the conversations of what's happening in the entertainment industry as it relates to AI, which is a big reason why I'm very excited to have you on the show. Something that I always start my conversations with is a news story about what we're seeing in this space. And there certainly has been no shortage of news about AI that's happening, and especially around
Yeah.
the entertainment industry. There's a recent article published by The Post that explored how AI is transforming entertainment, with the 2025 Oscars and Grammys most recently featuring AI assistant works. And this, as you well know, has sparked a lot of debate about creativity and job displacement in the film and music industries. So I'm wondering if we could, take a couple steps back, Duncan, and go back in time to SAG-AFTRA's historic 2023 strike, which addressed a lot of AI concerns. I'm wondering if you could share with our listeners what specific protections did you negotiate throughout that strike to ensure actors' likenesses and creative work aren't inappropriately replicated and replaced by AI technologies?
Oh, thanks for asking, Patrick. I mean, yeah, it was quite a moment in 2023, that's for sure. And it wasn't like the technology had just only started being used then, because of course we had seen the use of various sort of adjacent AI adjacent technologies and AI itself used to replicate performers, including, mainly high profile performers like, for example, Carrie Fisher, Paul Walker, and others. And so our members were already attuned to the implications of this. But as the technology rapidly became more available and lower cost, the sort of de facto protections no longer existed of you've got to have this massive, technology infrastructure and a huge budget that would limit the utility of replication. So our members, as we launched our negotiations in 2023, were extremely concerned about this. Of course, ChatGPT had just been released to the public in November of the preceding year, November of 22. So the capabilities of generative AI were very much on people's minds. And then, of course, it was Midjourney and DALL-E and all of the other tools that were being released for, not just large language models, but transformers and various types of technology that could do the kinds of things that our members were particularly concerned about. So we launched that negotiation, and we were very concerned about sort of two things. One being how we deal with digital replication and what kind of protections and guardrails should be there. And number two was what to do about the possibility of a future where actors could be just completely replaced by a synthetic creation of a generative AI system. So on that first part, we really spent a long time, I would say most of a year, deciding philosophically how to approach it. We had to get past the part where people basically said, let's try and block it. There was a sentiment of let's stop AI from happening. Let's use every bit of power we have to block its use in the industry. But past history taught us that that was not going to be a successful approach, and that even if it had a brief temporary effect, it would not be a lasting effect as the technology built in its desirability and it developed a sort of momentum. So we decided instead to try and put guardrails in place and channel AI's implementation around two core principles, one being informed consent, which builds together the ideas of transparency and consent, the idea that you should know what kind of use of your image, likeness, voice is going to be made with any kind of replication technology like an AI technology, and you should have the right to say yes or no to that in a meaningful way. And number two, fair compensation, meaning that if you are going to be replicated, and to me it seems so obvious, but believe me, lots of people didn't think this was the case, that you should be compensated if your image, likeness, voice, etc., is going to do work that either replaces you or replaces somebody else. And so those two core principles were the building blocks for what we negotiated in that agreement. And then we also took on the question of synthetic performers. But I think that one is a little further down the road. And so we made modest progress in that direction. But I think we did put in place a lot of really important, both general philosophies and also specific rules as it relates to digital replication. Our contract went from 0 pages on AI and digital replication to 16 pages of detailed rules about it.
Wow.
And I think that's been really important in helping the industry figure out what's the right, responsible, ethical way to move forward with AI in the entertainment business.
Well, yeah, and to that point, Duncan, just a big shout out and thank you to you and your team, because the provisions that you put in place, those guardrails, is really going to lay the foundation for many years to come. And that's a lot of what we talk about at the Responsible AI Institute as well, is when we have guardrails in place, when we have certain parameters that are being executed, it allows that foundation, and then therefore allows for us to tap into the advantages that come with artificial intelligence as well as time progresses. And that really leads me to my next question for you, Duncan. How does SAG-AFTRA plan to evolve its AI guidelines to address emerging technologies that are coming out? Of course, we've talked about likenesses. There's a lot of voice alteration software that's out there, as well as other emerging AI technologies. The technology is advancing so quickly. How is SAG-AFTRA sort of strategizing a pivot to keep up with all of these changes?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because for us, we're in a constant state of negotiation because we operate in four different industries, really. We operate in the film and television industry, the music industry, the advertising industry, and the broadcast journalism industry. So in each of these major industries, we are negotiating contracts. So actually, in about 4 days, I'm going to be starting negotiations with the commercial advertisers and advertising agencies, and so we'll be taking on the issue of artificial intelligence and its implementation in television and radio commercials, online advertising, et cetera. So by the time that's done, we'll be back to renegotiate the contract with the studios and streamers because that contract expires next year. So basically, we've been evolving our approach to these issues through every additional cycle of bargaining. So in 23, we bargained with the studios and streamers. Then, actually, just very shortly thereafter, we announced an agreement with a company that does digital replication for video games. Then we had another negotiation with the studios and streamers over animation, which was not covered in the 23 negotiations. So we did that. Then subsequent to that, we negotiated a deal with the major record labels for our recording artists and singers, which included important advances in AI. And so basically, we're evolving each iteration. And one of the important things we negotiate for in all these contracts is the right to meet with these companies semi-annually to find out what they're doing and what they're planning on a confidential basis, subject to NDAs and stuff, with AI. And that helps inform us sort of what the developing trends are in the industry so we can target our next round of bargaining towards that. So just to give you one example, Patrick, when we negotiated with the record labels, an advance I'm really proud of is we addressed the possibility of there being synthetic voices used to create tracks that are then subsequently released. So let's say that a record label creates a track using entirely GAI synthetic voices to create that track. Under our new agreement with them, they're obligated to pay the same royalties that they would have to pay to a human performer for the use of that synthetic voice on that track into a fund that we jointly manage. And that fund can then use those monies to help mitigate the impact that has on the workers who've been displaced by that reality. And for
Wow.
me, there's two things that are important about that. One, yeah, it's great to have the money to help mitigate the impacts, right? But also, it keeps the playing field level for human artists because it means that it's not cheaper for them to make a track with a synthetic voice and release it because they're going to pay the same royalties either way. If they could create a synthetic voice track and have it be royalty free, there would be a huge incentive to do that. Now, the incentive, that level playing field, now the fact that the human artist can bring that human creativity gives them a leg up. And I think that kind of economic incentive is actually how we can help make sure that synthetic performances don't get out of control. So that's encouraging. So it's that kind of thing that we do in every iteration. And I like to say our superpower as a union, our superpower as collective bargainers is we get to come back to the table, usually every 3 years, depends on the contract, but mostly it's a 3-year deal. And so every 3 years, we get to come back to the table with folks. We get to look at what's happened over the preceding term and evolve our contracts to address it. And so we will be there, cycle after cycle after cycle, building on what we did before and learning from what's happened since.
So, all of that said, you have plenty of work ahead of you. It's not going to be slowing down anytime soon, I imagine.
No, it's funny. After that strike, people said to me, "Aren't you glad you get to stop talking about AI?" I'm like, "Stop talking about AI? I don't think I get to stop talking about AI for a really long time because it is really clear that this is a crucial element of the future for our whole society, but certainly for this industry. This is not NFTs. That's why I keep reminding myself, like 4 or 5 years ago, people were freaking out about NFTs. Like NFTs are going to change everything, and NFTs have their value, but NFTs did not change the world, at least not in the entertainment industry, nor has blockchain changed the world. I mean, these are important tools that are going to be useful, but AI is a game changer, and we have to stay really focused on it and not and be unrelenting because if we don't, it's advancing so fast and it's got so many permutations of its capabilities that we could really be behind the curve if we don't stay up with it. So it is a huge priority and a continuous focus.
Well, yeah, and to that point too, it's amazing for artists to have someone like yourself who's really bridging that gap between what the technology companies are creating in AI with storytellers and kind of having that humanity at the focus of the stories that we're telling. As AI is continuing to advance in entertainment, with that said, and as you mentioned, it's not going away anytime soon, and it's really going to revolutionize how we create entertainment. uh, I would love to hear just your maybe personal vision on this, Duncan. What's your vision for maintaining human creativity while at the same time responsibly integrating technological innovations that could benefit performers?
Yeah, my core vision in that area is augmentation, not replacement. I mean, I feel like that's the like short and simple way to say it. AI tools can be incredible for artists. I'm a big music fan, and some of the music artists that I'm most excited about have been using AI as part of their creative process. I testified on a bill in Congress with Twigs, FKA Twigs, who talked about how she's been incorporating AI into her creative process. But that's something that should be driven by the artist. It shouldn't be driven by economic considerations that basically say cut out the human element and just replace it with algorithmic input. Instead, I think artists should be able to use AI technology to expand what they can do, to help build upon their creativity, not replace their creativity. So that's my vision for the future. And if we can find a future, and by the way, I really appreciate what the Responsible AI Institute is doing to help make this happen, like to really bring focus to these responsibility and ethics concerns. If we can do that, then I think we can actually see the societal benefit of AI instead of it turning into a dystopian situation. And frankly, I think that's true across a lot of industries. I mean, my focus is the entertainment industry, of course, and the creative industries. But I think in every industry, if we can focus on augmentation instead of replacement, I think that's great. And the other thing that I think is really great is the fact that some of the predictions about how fast AI will actually be implemented have been really off base. And I think that's one of the things we need. I'm not looking to slow down progress per se, but I do think we need to take the time to make really well thought out decisions. And in places where I've been where there's a heavy corporate influence, like for example, the World Economic Forum, I had a chance to be there and talk to a bunch of corporate leaders. And there's often this sense of, it's so exciting what we can do now. And yeah, I get it. It is exciting what we can do now. But let's not only think about what we can do, let's think about what we should do. And if we are going to do it, how we should do it. Because how we do it is in a lot of cases as important as whether we do it. So and they are surprisingly receptive to that message, I would say. But somehow somebody needs to bring that message to them because it's not percolating on its own. And so I keep advocating for more labor participation and more civil society participation in these places because I think it's a voice that needs to be heard alongside corporate, tech, and government voices.
Yeah, yeah, that resonates with me so much. This concept of just because we can do something doesn't necessarily mean that we should. And figuring out that opportunity where AI, as you were saying, can augment humanity and all the great creative work that is produced by humans, but keeping those humans central to the work as well. Duncan, I cannot thank you enough for taking the time to join us for the Responsible AI report today. And not only for taking the time, but as I mentioned a couple times throughout our conversation, I really just appreciate the work that you're doing for artists, being able to go into negotiations about artificial intelligence has already proven to be very important and will continue to be so for, I think, many years to come. I feel like I could speak for all creatives in saying thank you so much for the work that you're doing. Before we part ways, I'm wondering if you could just share with our listeners where they could find out more information about you and the work that you're doing.
Absolutely. Well, they can always come to our website at sagaftra.org. We have a very extensive website with, among other things, we publish the full text of all of the collective bargaining agreements we negotiate, including the AI provisions. So anyone who's interested in digging into the details, absolutely there. And then they could also follow us on social media. We're at SAG-AFTRA on all the platforms. I'm at Duncan CI, and I post some stuff online too. So, just staying engaged, I think, is so crucial. And I do want to say, Patrick, thank you to you and to the Institute because keeping the focus on these issues is so, so important. And I do feel like, people are making the decisions about implementation of AI. And if we're keeping this conversation going and educating and engaging people about it, that's going to help drive much better decision making. So thanks to you and the whole team there for making that happen.
I appreciate that. I'll be sure to include the links to those various resources in our show description. So for all our viewers and listeners out there, all you have to do is scroll down, click those links provided. Duncan, thank you so much again.
Thanks a lot, Patrick. Take care.